Hello. An underground fight promoter, Turkish, and his comrade Tommy are small-time actors in the violent criminal environment of London. Everything changes with the arrival of a man with 4 fingers and a huge diamond in his briefcase, which accidentally involves the heroes in a fierce battle for the jewel and at the same time for their lives. In Antwerp, a group of Orthodox Jews visits a jewelry store. The 4 are imposingly walking through security checkpoints under video surveillance cameras, chatting casually about religion and the Virgin Mary's immaculate conception of Jesus. The men enter the guarded office, at which point they instantly turn into furious criminals. Exposing their firearms, the robbers mercilessly beat what they came for out of the employees, a huge precious stone.
Where is the stone? Where is the stone?
One of the partners in the robbery, Frankie Four Fingers, has to take the stolen diamond through London to New York. An accomplice hands him a note with a phone number in case Frank needs a gun in England. At this time in London, an illegal boxing agent nicknamed Turkish is talking to his business partner Tommy. The guys are in the business of organizing underground fights, only instead of an office, they only have a crumbling trailer. So Turkish instructs his comrade to bring in a new trailer from the gypsy campsite, with whom they already have an arrangement. When talking business with his partner, Turkish is surprised to see a revolver in his pocket. The timid Tommy had never carried a gun before. The heavy gun was sold to him by a Russian gangster, Boris the Blade. Tommy is a gambling business owner, and there is a reason for his desire to have a gun and protect himself. This reason is the gray-haired man nicknamed Bricktop. He runs a betting office where he bets on illegal boxing fights. The solid-looking gentleman keeps a herd of pigs on his farm as a proven method of disposing of human corpses, and he hates Tommy. Meanwhile, Boris receives a call from his brother in Antwerp, the same guy who first told Frankie where to get a gun, and suggests that the Russians steal the stone. The diamond is in the briefcase strapped to Frankie's arm, who intends to stay in London for several days. The brother asks him not to kill the middleman with his own hands, and gives him a hint. Frankie is very addicted to gambling. Frankie, with the diamond, is already in a luxury atelier in London, trying on expensive suits. He calls his boss Avi in New York and informs him of his imminent arrival with the precious cargo of 86 carats. In London, he is delayed by the need to sell some small stones, for which Avi advises him to contact his cousin Doug. In addition, the man insists that Frank stay away from the casino. Frank's mind goes wild for a moment, but he silently agrees with Avi. The man drinking at the bar is Doug the Head, a jewelry store owner known in criminal circles for buying up stolen precious stones. On his way back from lunch, the man receives a call from his cousin, Avi, who asks him to meet Frankie. Meanwhile, in the Russian gangster's office, Frankie, with a suitcase strapped to his arm, is choosing a gun. When he asked about payment, Boris the Blade exploits the man's weakness and offers the gun in exchange for a favor. Frankie must place a bet for him in an illegal boxing match. Feeling the excitement, Frank loses his cool. The cunning Boris keeps pushing, hinting that he knows who will emerge victorious. Tommy and Gorgeous George arrive at the campsite to purchase the trailer. They are greeted by a tattooed, charismatic gypsy named Mikey. After exchanging money for the trailer and a black dog, the men realize that the deal was unfair. The trailer's wheels are broken. They'll have to settle matters with the gypsies in a fistfight. The huge George pounds the cheater with all his might before the latter even takes off his clothes. But having withstood the attacks, the fist-fighting champion knocks his opponent out with one sharp blow. Things are going too well at Soul's pawn shop when the sly Boris the Blade shows up and offers him a half-day job for $50,000. The job is to rob a bookmaker's office and steal a briefcase from Frank, the man with 4 fingers. The fence immediately agrees to the deal and takes Tyrone and Vinny as partners. The latter heads out with the dog he took from the gypsies and an intimidating machine gun. Obsessed with gambling, Frank shows up at the bookmaker's office in a van and is about to change his suit. Immediately after him, a trio in leather jackets pulls up in a car. Trying to park, the clumsy Tyler crashes into the van, denying Frank the opportunity to get out. Turkish and Tommy find themselves in a predicament. Only 2 days are left before the fight. The bets are placed, and the big George is in no condition to fight. A life-saving thought occurs to the agent.
Choose the fucking pike.
After consulting with his family, Gypsy agrees to fight in exchange for a new trailer for his mother. Turkish and Tommy arrive at Bricktop's. Enraged by the news of substituting the fighter, the man meets them surrounded by fighting dogs. However, the partners find a compromise. Mikey the Gypsy will have to go down in the 4th round. The cautious Avi calls his cousin Doug to find out about the outcome of his meeting with Frank. From him, he learns that he is going to bet on a boxing match. Infuriated by this news, Avi flies to London. The three in the car, not counting the gypsy dog, are waiting in ambush at the bookmaker's office, where those involved in the fight are already gathered. Seeing the man with the briefcase, the two robbers get down to business and break into the office. The mission is a complete failure. There is no money in the cash register. The man who enters has 5 fingers on his hands, and they also fail to steal even a small bag of copper coins. In desperation, collapsing on the floor in front of the closed door, the two men remove their masks, exposing their faces to the security camera. To the howl of the alarm, the calm Tyrone appears and opens the door from the outside. Fleeing from the scene of the crime, the poor fellows do have their moment and take Frank, who fell out of the van along with his suitcase, with them. The fight begins. Mikey calmly listens to Turkish's instructions to go down in the 4th round. However, after the bell rings, he knocks out the bulky heavyweight with one trademark punch, simultaneously putting his acquaintance in huge debt. Undercover for the night, Boris the Blade shows up at the pawn shop and discovers an unexpected scene. The robbers have dragged Frank, along with the suitcase, and Vinny is waving the diamond in his face, demanding half its value to make things fair, as the promised $50,000 was not in the office's cash register. During the conversation, Vinny accidentally calls Boris by his name in Frank's presence, and the Russian kills the latter with a shot to the head. Only afterwards does he learn that the hapless burglars have put the stone in the suitcase again, and now there is no living person who knows the code. Carrying away the severed hand with the briefcase, the Blade leaves the body and $10,000 to the trio. Turkish owes Blacktop a huge sum and does not want to be eaten by pigs, so he returns to his office to pick up the money and flee the city. However, an ambush awaits him there. Bricktop, for the sake of his survival, is going to arrange another fight for the gypsy, and Turkish again has to guarantee that he loses exactly in the 4th round. Following this, Bricktop goes in search of loser robbers. In the video from the camera, his accomplices recognize the fat Tyrone. Tommy and Turkish show up at the gypsy neighborhood with an offer to fight again. They catch Mickey hunting with his friends. Their leisure time consists of letting 2 hounds off the leash and waiting for the dogs to catch the hare. The enterprising gypsy offers to place a bet, and if he wins, he will fight for free. If he loses, it will be for a new trailer. Turkish has his doubts, but there's no other way out. He bets on the hounds. Bricktop's goons, meanwhile, are patrolling the town looking for Tyrone. Seeing his pursuers, the fat man dashes off and hits a dead end, followed by being thrown into a trunk and then into a pit full of dogs. At the threat of being eaten alive, he promptly gives up his partners. At the gypsy's hunt, the hare has escaped the hounds, and now Turkish has to get Mikey a new trailer. At the pawn shop, Sol, Vinny, and Lincoln mull over what to do with Frank's body, unaware that Bricktop's goons are unlocking the front door on Tyrone's tip. The trio doesn't hide the corpse in time, and the man catches them off guard. Bricktop starts from afar, talking passionately about how 16 pigs can do away with a 200-pound body in 8 minutes. As he finishes his lecture, he stands up demonstratively, announcing that the retribution time has come and gestures to another room, where butchers in aprons are packing Tyrone, still alive, into a black sack. The unfortunate robbers suffer the same fate. Under threat of death, the poor guys agree to find the diamond in 48 hours or become fodder for pigs. Cousin Avi and the hired thug Bullet-Toothed Tony are looking for Frank. After getting a tip on the bookmaker's office, Tony tracks down his informant, nicknamed the Hammer, who is clearly not happy to hear the familiar voice from behind his back. Clamping the poor man's head in the car door, Tony drags him along, increasing the speed. This torture works, and the cowardly Hammer gives away Sol and Vinny from the pawn shop on Smith Street. Later at gunpoint, Sol gives up the customer, the bulletproof Boris the Blade. Turkish, who has failed, calls Bricktop and tells him about his unsuccessful negotiations with the gypsy. The bandit is not happy with his outcome. He orders his associate Erol to severely punish the useless Englishman and arrange for the rebellious gypsy to step into the ring. Erol and his goons trash Tommy and Turkish's gambling hall. The other gang is sent to the gypsy camp to set fire to Mickey's mother's trailer while she is inside. The fire that killed a family man ignites fury in Mikey, as well as a desire for bloody revenge. Turkish, meanwhile, witnesses the destruction of the arcade, but he is in no position to win. He is saved from reprisals by Tommy, who appears in time with a revolver in his hands. Only the two of them know that the gun they bought from Boris the Blade does not fire. However, Tommy's menacing appearance causes the thugs to retreat. In the morning, the partners show up at the camp, where Mikey humbly announces that he has changed his mind and will fight to avoid further deaths. In the jeweler's office, the cousins and Tony are figuring out how to find Boris. Tony tells them that Boris the Blade is a former special agent and is impossible to trace. In the meantime, one of Doug's daughters report over the phone that a certain stranger has shown up to sell an 86-carat stone. The men see the elusive Russian on the surveillance screen. Having disarmed him for a while, they go to his house, open a catch in the floor, and find the coveted diamond. In the meantime, a couple of losers from the pawn shop show up to Boris's house too. They learn from Tyrone that the Blade himself is in the trunk and his house is being cleaned out by 3 tough guys. The tranquil Turkish and Tommy also go to the Russian's house to get a new working gun. Cousin Avi, Tony, and the bouncer meanwhile hastily get into the car to escape, discussing on the way how to deal with the hated Boris. The unfortunate trio from the pawn shop stay on their tail until they run over a man who appears in the middle of the road. Turkish, meanwhile, is listening to a lecture from the brainy Tommy about the dangers of lactose on the digestive system. And for the good of his partner's health, Tommy calmly throws a bag of milk out the window that smashes into the windshield of another car. The restless cousins Avi and Tony are still discussing a way to execute Boris. The big guy in the back seat is twirling a long dagger in his hands, which they eventually decide to use. Suddenly, a bag of milk flies into their windshield, causing Tony to lose control and crash into a road pole. When the men come to their senses, they watch as Boris, with a bag on his head, stomp clumsily onto the road, where he is immediately knocked down by an equally clumsy trio from the pawn shop. The battered cousin Avi and Tony both get out of the car, since the thug has died, and walk into a local bar. Turkish and Tommy, having driven past this mess, are already at Boris the Blade's house and see the door open. Knowing the gangster, Turkish is afraid to go in. Tommy, on the other hand, musters the courage to do so in order to get a working gun. Behind their backs, the bloodied and distraught Boris appears. He immediately gives Tommy a punch in the gut for trying to block the road. Then he leaves again, taking a machine gun from the house. At the bar, Tony calls his cousin Doug for help, but behind him is the familiar trio with guns at the ready. The guy in the leather jacket and masks threaten to kill him if he does not give up the diamond. The old-timer Tony is calm. Without flinching a muscle, he makes the bandits hide, pointing at their fake gun and laying his .50 caliber Desert Eagle on the table. Horrified, the poor masked bandits cowardly hide behind the door. However, in the hallway, the trio encounters cousin Avi with a suitcase in his hands. At this moment, crazy Boris the Blade also shows up with a machine gun. Tony hears the scuffle and orders Avi to get down on the floor. Everyone falls to the floor in time, except Boris the Blade. However, Tyrone is also wounded. The frightened Sol and Vinny leave him behind, hiding with the suitcase in their hands. Tony notices that the briefcase is missing. Then, to his surprise, he sees the bloody Boris, whom he immediately fires a bullet at. Wounded Tyrone is next in line, but Boris, known to bounce bullets off him, still shows signs of life. Tony has to put a full clip into him, which leaves the lucky Tyrone alive. A pair from the pawn shop is in the parking lot at the bookmaker's office. Vinny fumbles restlessly in his pants, pulling out a rock that Sol is supposed to give to Bricktop, when bullet-toothed Tony shows up outside their car. After lying that the diamond is in the pawn shop, Sol and Vinny bring Avi and Tony there, seeing the destruction made by the dog. The pair claim that the dog has swallowed the jewel too. Avi sternly orders Tony to open up the dog as if it were a tin can. Understanding the seriousness of the thug's intentions, Vinny, out of pity for the dog, hands over the diamond. Whereupon the dog snatches the stone from Avi's hands, swallows it, and promptly leaps out the window. The fight is only a couple of hours away, and Mikey is still hungover from his mother's funeral. Turkish and Tommy arrive to drive him to the fight. Before entering the ring, Bricktop reminds the gypsy of his agreement to go down in the 4th round, or he will burn the campsite to the ground. The heated opponents enter the ring. After the bell strikes, the sneaky Mikey knocks the big man down with a single punch. However, the big guy suddenly rises to his feet and is ready to continue. Bricktop, Turkish, and Tommy watch tensely, because there's a lot of money and many lives at stake, including theirs. The fight goes on and on. Under the onslaught of his heavyweight opponent, Mikey misses punch after punch. It looks like the gypsy is going to give up, but it was all just a play, and after enduring the onslaught, Mikey knocks out his formidable opponent in the 4th round. Tommy and Turkish are terrified. Bricktop is furious. It turns out that the gypsies have left the campsite and shot all of Brick's top men. On the way out of the hall, they kill him and his personal guards, take Mikey, and drive off into the sunset. As it turns out, Mikey didn't go down until the last minute because he had thought of everything and bet on himself. The next day, the partners arrive at the campsite, but the gypsies have disappeared. Upon encountering the law enforcement officers, the couple has to make up a story that they are simply walking a dog. Tommy takes the gypsy dog, and they leave. Turkish allows Tommy to keep the dog, in whose stomach the vet finds a diamond weighing 86 carats. The men decide to exchange it for money at a jeweler's, nicknamed Doug the Head, who is famous in the criminal underworld. As always, you'll find the movie title in the description, and in the comments let us know whose victory you bet on during the story. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next awesome retelling. Watch an interesting movie in a few minutes without rewind? Easy!
We got a great looking audience tonight.
The Sweet Popcorn channel has a mega convenient format waiting just for you. Short retellings of movies, from auteur films to Hollywood blockbusters. Pick up your unlimited ticket by clicking the subscribe button.